All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Axiom Esports Legacy of the Void tournament. Just a casual little event, although some of our guys are definitely taking this more seriously, perhaps, than you might expect. Ryung has now been relegated to dish duty after that shameful display. Just, no. Didn't do it. No. I expect more from Ryung, frankly. No. I mean, I guess I don't blame him. He has actually been taking the real game more seriously lately, so that's probably got something to do with it, but... oh, well. Never mind.
It's a tough thing to just jump into, especially when your opponents played a bit more, and it looked like Crank he had a better idea of, what units do what, and how can I make them work, and
yeah.
Once the Tebas came out, it was scary for Ryung.
I'd say so. Damn terrifying. Damn terrifying for a lot of people. There's been a discussion on the forums, it's like, is that dot overpowered? I don't think so. I don't think it is. I think that you can repair through it, you can transfuse through it, and in a hit-and-run scenario, that Disintegrate is not going to be as effective. It does mean you have to pull units to deal with it, but I think the most effective scenario with a Tempest is actually using it with drop defense, because that is almost guaranteeing a medevac kill on the way out. Even if it leaves immediately, it's probably going to die before it gets repaired, which I think is very handy in TBP.
Yeah. Definitely. The thing is that you still have to get a Stargate, you still have to get a fleet beacon, and then to commit a Tempest just for defense is, it's a big investment, even if it's very effective at what it does.
That is true. I don't know. Maybe they have to put energy on that thing. I'm not sure if that would really make a huge amount of difference, one way or the other. It is a 50-second cooldown. It's hard to say. I don't hate it. Yeah. I think it's a pretty fun ability. Obviously, Brood War had Irradiate, which did a fairly similar thing, so it's not unprecedented.
Yeah, Irradiate is very, very strong. It's way stronger than the Disintegration ability.
Yeah. All right, here we go. TBT on Habitation Station. To the northwest position in the Red Trunks playing Terran, we have the WCS Season 3 Grand Finalist, Axiom Heart, versus his opponent to the northeast position, coming out of retirement here to show Hart a thing or two. He is the STC.
And he is going for a gas first. Both players... actually, I'm not sure if Hart is scouting. No, Hart is going to go for a barracks.
Proxy.
Yep.
And so is STC. All right.
Well... This is going to be unusual. So slight advantage to STC for having the closer barracks.
Yep.
That means that his units will be able to do damage just a little bit sooner. And I feel like one of these players knew... I almost feel like they both know that their opponent is doing something. Because didn't they... I thought they saw each other's SCVs in the middle, and then neither player actually scouted with the SCVs.
Yeah. I think so. It's just a really odd position. They're both also getting double gas. Now, what comes out of this? Obviously, there's a tech lab going down on both. Are we seeing Herc play? Are we actually going to see Reapers coming out here? We've noted that the Herc is not an incredible harassment unit without the arc cannon. Will we see either player attempt to go for the arc cannon? Is it something else? Will we see a Reaper and a Herc? We will see Reaper plus Herc or something. I don't know. Well, we got double Hercs coming out. Okay, here we go.
Hercs for both players. Hart is getting a second barracks in his main, and I don't think either player is going to go for the arc gun. It's just too expensive. And from personal experience, I found that proxy Herc is actually terrible. But if you're both proxying a Herc, then neither player really has any defense at all, and we're going to see a very weird game come out. Hart is going for the arc gun upgrade. Meanwhile, STC is using his extra gas for a factory, and now the Hercs are going to enter each other's bases. Both players know what's up, and it's about to get really crazy.
It is about to get a little bit weird, isn't it? That supply depot is not going to go up. Not that it would matter anyway. And it's going to be who gets the surround, really. Now, if this continues, of course, and STC continues with the surround strategy, which is the best way to deal with the Herc at the moment, he's going to have a nasty surprise once the arc gun is finished.
Yep. That's going to make the Herc able to deal with these SCVs. And now Hart has two Hercs in STC's base. He has not pulled quite enough SCVs here. Factory does finish, but there's not really anything he can build out of it that's going to be effective here.
Do you build a Cyclone? I mean, you could, I guess. That would probably do the job, but both players are taking devastating economic losses here. The Arc Gun is now done. No, he cancelled it. He cancelled the Arc Gun. I imagine he wants to build... He's building a Hellion. I don't think that actually works.
Yeah, I'm not sure that a Hellion is really going to be able to deal with. But, you know, the Hellion, even though the Herc can jump to the Hellion if he micros it, which he is not really... Nope, he didn't do that at all. Very distracted back home, and it looks like Hart has cleaned it up.
Well, that was terrible. Like, what else can you say? That was an awful game. Oh, Jesus. Alright. Please don't do that again. That was very silly. Alright. Okay, well. I'm not 100% convinced about the CVT yet.
Is over.
And everyone is very glad that that is the case. That was a weird game. So, I think you're kind of right with Proxy Herc. I think Proxy Herc Arc Cannon is terrible. Like, it takes too long for that to be effective.
Yeah, and what I found is if they just build Marines and Kite and use some SCVs to buffer, you're not getting a lot of damage done, and because it takes so much gas, you don't really have a good transition behind it.
Yeah.
And especially with the option of Proxy Marauder. Like Proxy Herc versus Proxy Marauder, they both do very similar things. I wouldn't say that the Proxy Herc is any more effective, but the Proxy Herc costs way more gas.
Yes.
Is a way bigger investment. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you had to delay your tech so much in order to make that happen.
Right. So for it to be a justifiable, real strategy, you have to do way more damage. Of course, in that last game, when both players go for the same strategy, you don't really see how that would play out. And Hart just managed it a lot better. He was able to keep his Hercs alive. STC didn't quite pull enough SCVs to really overwhelm the Hercs, and eventually he just was able to stabilize with those, SCVs at home, some Marines coming out, and Hercs at STC's base.
Speaking of STC, we see refinery first, quite literally, before supply depot, which... I mean, I guess you saw that in Wings of Liberty beta, if I recall correctly, when you didn't need a supply depot for barracks. I think you could maybe have done it then, but that's still a bit wild. That's going to take a lot of getting used to.
Yep. But I think the timing here is pretty close to correct. I'm not sure if you actually are supposed to get the supply depot or the gas first, but you can see his barracks is already about halfway done. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Hart going for what will probably be a Reaper. Yeah,
I don't necessarily see Herc nonsense on this map. It's a very big map, and Hercs, they're not fast units. They look fast because of the grappling hook, but if you've got nothing to grab onto, those things are just going to waddle their way across the map. Reaper's a much better play here, especially on a map of this size.
Yeah, I think that is all true, and now Hart getting that second gas, he's going to get that orbital, and he's actually getting a Marine, so he's probably going to go for a very fast factory. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, STC, barracks finishes, factory does go down, and we can see he had about 40 or 50 extra gas left over, so if he wanted to go for a Reaper, that early gas is more justified, but with the transition he's going to, we can see that STC hasn't played a lot of Legacy of the Void. And yeah, so he's got a little bit of extra gas, right?
Yeah, I mean, even if you went straight into a starport for something like a Banshee, it looks like it's probably going to be an early Cyclone. I think that Tech Lab looks like it's going to be a swapper. So I think opening with a Cyclone is likely here. How good that is? Well, I mean, it's great at kiting individual units. I mean, the Cyclone's essentially the Stalker from hell in this matchup.
Yeah, yeah, because there's no Zerglings, there's no Zealots, and actually this gas... Oh,
he's going Banshee. So all right.
If that was going to be a Cyclone, this build lined up perfectly. He was going to have exactly 150 gas.
Yeah.
But because he does build that starport, we can see he's banking a little bit. And the really interesting thing is that you can go Banshee on 1 gas in this matchup now, because there is no cloak upgrade.
Yep. I mean, I saw that change, and that was the one thing that struck me as, that sounds absurdly overpowered. Ridiculous. Why would you give such an early game unit invisibility for free? Why would you do that? But I suppose that it sounds ridiculous, but it maybe isn't in practice. It isn't quite as crazy, and yes, people can adapt to it. But we're seeing an adapted version of Hellion Banshee here, which was a good build before, and now is even better.
Yeah, for sure. The Banshee is in a little bit of a weird place, because against Zerg, it's a standard opening that you can do a lot, and it's great. Against Protoss, it's basically total garbage that only very, very few times will we ever see it. And against Terran, it's not just a staple standard. It's like almost every single game, one of the players goes to Banshee. So they made it stronger. Maybe it's in Protoss now, but who cares about all of that? We got a little bit of action going on.
We do, and it seems like Hellion Banshee maybe is not quite as good as we thought, because the Cyclone is in play, which has driven the Hellions away, and of course can also shoot the Banshee, but the Banshee has Cloak. So that shut that down pretty well, and now the Hellions are streaming in to chase the Cyclone away, and the Cyclone's probably going to account for itself pretty well. It murders Hellions very fast, and it's actually fast enough to get away from the Banshee by the looks of it. Oh, hello, Viking.
Unuses Cloak, and now the Viking and the Cyclone are going to be able to take it down. And it looks like Hart is just rallying Cyclones and Vikings to his opponent's base.
Why not? Seems to do the job. It has the answer. Hellions are awful against Cyclones, absolutely dreadful. And without a Banshee in sight, I don't really see what he's going to be able to do here. He has another Banshee that's just popped out. There aren't 3 Cyclones on the map. This one is about to die, admittedly. And, of course, there aren't that many scans either. So this can still work. He's just got to be careful. He doesn't want to get locked onto. He's able... He got out! He managed to get away on 4 hit points.
And, wow, Cyclones are so good at killing Hellions. Like, the Hellions, they just don't do anything. What does he need?
A Marauder, but I mean, even that's not going to be incredible if you don't have Concussive Shell. The Hellions just don't trade well with this. I mean, it makes sense when you think about it. We're talking about lightly armored units. The speed is the advantage, but a speed is no advantage against the Cyclone. And the Cyclone's a rapid fire unit that locks on and murders things.
Yeah, I think maybe just Banshees are really what he needs, but
that's all he's got.
Now that he has more scans, you know,
he's going to lose another Banshee, straight up here. I mean, it's just not, he's not trading efficiently, and he's stuck on one base as well. Hart has an expansion. That's perhaps the thing to note here. Looks like he's committed a lot, and he kind of has, but simultaneously, this expansion has not been taken yet. And this is Legacy of the Void. Like, an 8-minute expansion is incredibly late.
Yeah. Although, I think the Banshee, trading one Banshee for one Cyclone is actually okay, because they cost about the same amount of money. I want to say that Cyclones cost slightly more gas, actually.
Yeah, let me see if I can bring resources lost. It's actually relatively even. STC's lost about 300 more resources than his opponent, and that was probably in Hellions. So I think you're probably right. Total units lost, he only lost 2 Banshees, and Hart lost 4 Cyclones. So that's not awful.
And it looks like now STC is going to be going for heavy Cyclone production. He's going to Factory Tech Lab with a starport with reactor. Hart moving across the map with some Cyclones, and it looks like that Banshee in Hart's base got cleaned up.
It did, yeah. It got killed pretty quickly. It didn't have a great deal of Cloak energy. I mean, Cloak sounds great, but when you realize that you don't really start with that much Cloak energy anyway, and it takes you a while to get across the map, it can be a bit of a problem. And it looks like these Cyclones will eventually die, but... well, actually, no, they won't. Banshee managed to kill one of them, but another one goes down here, and those things are certainly expensive. It's going to be Cyclone on Cyclone warfare by the looks of it. The SCVs are pulled, and they should be able to deal with this without taking horrendous losses. STC lands a couple of Vikings as well. This Viking's acquitting itself quite well. It's taken 4 kills now before it eventually dies. Raven in play for Hart. Raven against Cyclones. Now, PDD... I don't know how effective that's going to be.
I haven't seen that interaction before, so I'm also not sure. I assume that it affects the Cyclone's projectile, but it attacks so incredibly quickly that I think it'll burn out
very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to do the job. And obviously they got nerfed a bit as well, but the duration's not going to be relevant in this encounter, I don't think. But yeah, I don't think the Raven is an ideal choice. The Seeker missile may be helpful, but the PDD is probably going to get cut through very quickly. Auto turrets, maybe? I mean, Oh no.
Yeah, I think the Raven is more just kind of the natural response to the Banshee.
Yeah, maybe.
Because STC could have kept making Banshees. He stopped, and the Raven, you know, it's hanging around, but it's not going to be doing too much. Might see it probably for auto turrets if it stays in the Cyclone versus Cyclone type of battle.
Oh, I don't think it's going to live by the looks of it. Oh, I got one more shot off. Yeah,
Yep.
he picks it off. He loses 2 Vikings for it, but he also killed a Viking of his own, so I think that's worth.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, we see a siege tank being built. And I mean, I don't hate that against Cyclones, absolutely not. That seems like a pretty good idea. We've got a Cyclone versus Cyclone war going on here, and some people have suggested, yeah, PDD would be great. It's like, do you realize how fast Cyclones fire with lock-on? Like, they will cut through PDDs ludicrously quickly. I don't agree with... yes, it's okay. It's great to block some shots, but I don't think in long term they're in any way good. I might be wrong, though. We'll see. Armory being added on here for STC, so we have this very odd mech v mech thing going on at the moment.
Yeah, it's not the mech of Heart of the Swarm. That is for sure.
Thank God for that.
See. Now we are both seeing players go very heavy on the Cyclones. Hart does have a third factory with reactors, so he's able to make Hellions as well. Meanwhile, STC is just now adding some additional factories. Both players getting the gas mining at their third bases, so their economy is up and running. The big advantage for STC right now is he's got air superiority, and that means he can basically pin a lot of his opponent's units at home just by keeping the Vikings nearby. He can threaten to land inside of his opponent's base, although the Cyclones will be able to deflect that without too much trouble, I think.
Yeah, he does have to watch out for that, particularly with landed Vikings. They're too slow, and this could be actually devastating. He's going to lose. Well, that's that air superiority just gone. The entire Viking force melted by the Cyclones. Not a great idea from STC, unfortunately. That was... If it was going to land, at least land in the mineral line so you can kill something. That got nothing done. That was a huge waste.
Yeah, and I think that move was very reminiscent of pre-Legacy of the Void, where your opponent's only real mobile ground to air is going to be Thors. Thors don't really do that much damage, but when 3 or 4 Cyclones find your landed Vikings, they just get annihilated. And now we can see SCC in a very difficult spot right now. He has very few units, lost so many Vikings for almost nothing, and his production hasn't really kicked in yet.
He does, however, have 7 Cyclones, which, if he gets a good fight, could be helpful. But he's up against a mixed force, which has tanks in it, it's got Hellions in it, Vikings to spot, and there's even a Thor that's going to be brought in here. Well, the Hellions are dead. That was pretty quick. SDC massacres them. And he comes in from the flank. Hart could take a lot of damage here, potentially, but the siege tanks are being sieged up, and the Cyclones are taking significant damage, being driven away by the siege tanks.
And SCC trying to add more command centers here. He's forced off this area in his third base. Hart is doing a lot of damage here. The command center may actually go down. SCC really has to group all of his forces. He may have to just pull SCVs and engage this from every angle if he wants to hold on.
Yeah, he's bringing SCVs with it to try and repair the Cyclones, which I think is a decent enough bet, but he needs to somehow get a lock-on on that siege tank, which is very difficult without taking big shots. And there's a Thor and multiple Cyclones defending it, so it's going to be difficult. STC loses a base, which is never ideal. He does have this one at the top, which hasn't really been spotted yet by Hart. Actually, he knows it's there, he just isn't going to engage it. He's too busy engaging this right here, and Hart has massive superiority on the ground here. STC's army does not stand a chance. A flank does come in and does kill the tank, but there is a Thor there, which is ripping its way through the Cyclones very effectively.
Yeah, and it looks like Hart's unit composition here is the superior one. He's able to take that fight, and Hart, in a very quick, decisive 2-0.
Convincing.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, do we blame him? I think, you know, the SDC is maybe a little bit of a mismatch for Hart in his current form, but that was an interesting fight regardless. I liked watching that. I think there's a lot of potential for that matchup to really develop, honestly.
Yeah, the early Cyclones plus the free Cloak Banshee, it's going to completely redefine the opening.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like against Zerg and Protoss, it's not so different. You know, you can open the Cyclone, but the Hurk is not super impressive early game. The Cyclone has kind of a natural response in terms of just a Ling Flood, or perhaps some early Blink Stalkers. Not sure. The Cyclone does seem quite strong against Protoss, but TVT everything about it is so different because of that free cloak, because of the power of the Cyclone. And the transition into this new style of mech that's like just a few high-powered units like tanks and Thors, and then a big flood of Cyclones to defend them. Really cool to see from Heart.